Good evening and welcome to the WDSU News Hot Seat. I'm Travers Mackle. Tonight we're talking about one of the biggest stories this week that rocked the country, something known as Operation Varsity Blues, if you will, a pay-for-play scandal that involves some of the biggest colleges in America right now, just to name a few: Stanford, Yale, Texas, Wake Forest. In essence, federal prosecutors have alleged that well-known people, Hollywood actresses as well as corporate elite, were paying to get their kids into these select universities. One of the national reporters who helped break this story is Tom Winter from NBC Investigates, and he joins us now live from New York. Tom, first off, thanks for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
So give us the genesis of this. How did we get to this spot where we are today? Because this is a story that shocked people nationwide.
Yeah, it sure did. I mean, this was a wide-ranging, a large investigation. Basically, what happened was about a year ago or so, there was a separate undercover financial crimes and financial fraud investigation that was going on that has nothing to do with what was charged earlier this week. Out of that investigation, the FBI received a tip. And basically, one of the people that was caught up in the investigation said, "Hey, yeah, you kind of got me on what you're investigating. But, there's this whole other thing that you guys might be interested in and might want to know about." And it's surprising how many investigations actually begin that way. So the FBI Boston Field Office, the IRS, and the U.S. Attorney's Office up in Massachusetts were able to take a look at this. They used cell site analysis. So they were able to locate where certain people would be. They were able to get wiretaps. They were able to review emails. They were able to do what's called controlled FBI calls, where the FBI is actually in the room with somebody who's cooperating with them as they get somebody on the phone in order to get them talking essentially about some of the illegal acts that they did. That involves some of the Hollywood stars. So back a year ago, kind of the ringleader of this, William Singer, they were up on his phones. So anytime that he would have a communication with somebody that was that had to do with their case, they were able to listen to that, record it, and start to get a sense of the scheme. After that, they made an arrest on him. He's the one that runs this Key Foundation and kind of the organization that ran this whole scheme. He pleaded guilty to charges, and then he agreed to cooperate, not only making those controlled phone calls, as I said, but also wearing a wire, having a microphone on him. In the course of that, believe it or not, he actually told somebody, "Hey, there's this investigation and I'm involved in this investigation and you should know that they're investigating this whole scheme." It was recorded on the FBI wire, so they were not particularly thrilled with him. But basically this case started to come together, and up until even a month ago, some of the calls were being made to some of the famous families that were involved in this. Lori Loughlin, there was a phone call with her where this William Singer guy essentially said to her, he said, "Hey, the IRS is looking into this whole scheme, and if they contact you, you'll just tell them it's a donation, what you paid me, right? And no need to mention what we did for your daughter." And she agreed with that and agreed to do it. And at that point, not only did the FBI have her emails, and we'll use her as an example, not only did they have emails talking about this scheme, getting the pictures of her daughter saying that she was on a crew team, or she was on a rowing erg because she was on a crew team, something that never really occurred and something she really wasn't a part of. But when you have that, and then you're able to marry that to one of these controlled calls, you're able to prove intent, and you're able to show that this person knew what they were doing was illegal. And that's why so many of these parents that we've seen so far that try to get their kids into these schools and were able to get these kids into these schools, in many cases, that's why we saw them get entangled with it. And I'll just add one other thing. The reason why the FBI and the Department of Justice can look into this is when a school receives over $10,000 in grants or foundation money or some sort of federal funding. At that point, if you defraud that school, you're defrauding the federal government, you're defrauding us, the taxpayer. And so, Travers, at that point, they were able to say this could be a federal investigation, and it's something that we can look into.
And we're talking big money here, too, Tom. $25 million is the accusation from 2011 to 2019. So this isn't chump change by any stretch of the imagination. Let's talk about some of the outrageous allegations in here, if you can get in depth on that. Some of these things you can't even make up. I mean, it's like a Hollywood movie what some of these parents are accused of doing.
Well, some of these things, some of these accusations, if we made them up, people might not believe it. I mean, when you look at it, you have a one instance where one of the children allegedly, the parents came up that she was some sort of a soccer star, that she was some sort of a great player, played on a national team, was an MVP, had really no soccer background whatsoever. Her parents are alleged to have paid tens of thousands of dollars, perhaps more, in order to get her onto a soccer team. And then when it came time for actually to show up to school and play, just ahead of time, she said that she had an injury and wouldn't be able to play in that upcoming season. Something that the school actually flagged. They said, "Hey, where's this player? You said this person was going to be joining your team." And the coach said, "Oh, they have an injury. You know, they're not going to be able to join." There was another instance where somebody kind of made it seem like they were a tennis star, and they were going around to all sorts of professionally, or I shouldn't say professional, but kind of these farm team professional tournaments where you would start to gain that experience and start to become a national player, and that this woman allegedly was a nationally ranked tennis star. And in fact, the FBI was able to go back and find out that when she was 12 years old, she won only a handful of matches and lost maybe 20 or 30 matches. So they actually were able to go back and just point out that this person did not have the credentials when it came to her tennis playing ability. So they would put forward kids that had really no athletic ability, or certainly not at the level that they would be needed for that college, in order to get them on a team, and then they would kind of wash out from that team. But at that point, they're already in the school. The parents have the money, so it's not necessarily a financial aid situation. It's not a scholarship situation. So yeah, you had numerous cases where tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, in some cases even millions of dollars, were allegedly paid to this group by these parents. In one other scheme I'll just mention, that they had people that were bribed to take the SATs and the ACT tests for these kids. So it's really kind of an incredible scheme that had all sorts of different facets to it.
One of the most appalling things when you read these court documents, Singer is accused of falsifying students' ethnicities and other biographical details to take advantage of affirmative action. Does that jump out to you, and is that something that prosecutors really zeroed in on? Because we have families right now that are watching this here in Southeast Louisiana who just went through the admissions process with their kids for colleges, not just in this area, but nationwide, who probably look at that and say, "You got to be kidding me."
Yeah, I mean, I think, for people that are watching us tonight at home, that are going through this process, it's a very stressful time. These application fees are not cheap. You're trying to get into all these various different types of schools so that you have options, whether you're the student or the parent, you have options as far as where to go. And I think that was the thing that really rankled law enforcement the most. It was the example that you just gave, Travers, but in addition to that, it was just the idea that kids were getting into schools that might not otherwise be able to get in there. Or let's use the athletic example that I just gave. Kids were able to get onto teams, essentially wash out from those teams, but a lot of kids play sports. And so this was an opportunity for somebody who maybe had a chance to get to a specific college or had a chance to join a team as their way to maybe get into a better school, that those were opportunities that were missed. So I think that really, really upset law enforcement. Another thing that I think folks keyed in on to the question that you asked and kind of the example that you gave right there, there were several instances where they were able to change the location and the proctors of these tests because they had bribed the people that were administrating the tests so that some of these kids could get unlimited time. There are many legitimate reasons why kids that are taking the test in high school, and any one of the two major college board tests, that are taking those tests get unlimited time or get extra time. It can deal with all sorts of physical or mental conditions, psychological conditions, and so those are all very valid things to be able to get more time to be able to take the test. And when you have somebody here who's bribing people and parents who are essentially bribing somebody else, or that's what's been alleged here, to pass on those payments in order for a kid to get extra time, I think it kind of casts a pall over the entire system.
The U.S. Attorney in Massachusetts said the real losers here, the hardworking students across America. Final question here. You've covered a lot of investigations, and a common question that you get asked about these probes is, how far-reaching is it? How deep will the tentacles go? So here's that question for you. Is this over with right now, or does this investigation continue? And could more families and possibly more universities be touched by this investigation?
Well, it's a great question. So what we know is that on one of the wiretap calls involving this William Singer, the person who's pleaded guilty to being the ringleader and the person who organized the whole scheme, he said that he had done that. He was talking to another parent. He said that he did this for 761 other families. And obviously we saw 30, 40 some odd people get charged, 50 altogether, but 30 or 40 some odd people get charged earlier this week that were parents, but some of those were a husband and wife. So we didn't even see 50 families get charged. So I think when you look at this and you listen to what the U.S. Attorney said, and based on folks we've talked to in the law enforcement community, I think more arrests here of parents and potentially people that were involved in the scheme is not only possible, but I think it's likely. So I think that this could definitely go beyond the scope of what we've seen so far. In addition, we know that this investigation, one of the reasons why it's being handled, people have asked, well, why isn't it in California, or why is this investigation somewhere else? The reason why it's been handled up in Boston is because one of the first schemes that they got onto involved several universities up there, Boston College, Boston University, and Northeastern. So that's how they were able to get onto the case, and that's why it was handled out of that particular part of the country. But those three schools weren't mentioned this week as part of the overall scheme. So we already have some schools that haven't been named formally yet that we know that exist. So I think it is definitely possible. And when you look at the caliber of some of the schools that are in your area, in the New Orleans area, those are desirable schools and desirable programs to get into. So I think it is definitely likely we're going to hear about more schools, and it's possible that we may even hear about some schools from your neck of the woods.
All right, Tom Winter, we appreciate your time. Great job with this story. We have a lot of people who follow this right now, and you break a lot of news, not just on NBC and MSNBC, but also on Twitter. Really quickly before we go, anybody who is watching this who wants to follow you, where you break a lot of your stories, could you give them your Twitter handle really quickly?
Sure thing. Well, you're going to be inundated with crime reports, but it's at Tom_Winter. And of course, you can see all of our reporting on this on our website, NBCnews.com and NBCnews.com investigations. Folks can just look us up there. We're going to continue to follow it. As a matter of fact, just as we're getting ready to speak here, I was looking at my phone and noticed several things come into the court dockets around this. So we're literally following this minute to minute, and we're definitely going to follow up with it and maybe even speak to you about it again soon.